So a couple years ago, I decided to go vegan. I went vegan for 30 days. I didn't make it my lifestyle for the rest of my life, though I thought about it. But just 30 days, I did it and got some of my friends and my family to come along on the journey with me. Suckers. And so with that, one thing that we found was it was kind of hard to figure out protein of it all, right? And not to say that it was impossible. I did end up getting enough protein through those 30 days. I don't think my wife did. After a while, I saw her sneaking like eggs and stuff, but I digress. But I did the 30 days. That's not what this is about today. Today is about finding the protein. Welcome back to the Chef Boy RDN podcast with your host, Chef Boy RDN. And today we are going to be talking about protein, the good macronutrient or the good boy of macronutrients. Now, why do I call it the good macronutrient or the good boy macronutrient? Well, I don't actually. That's what y'all call it. Y'all believe in this magical, mystical being that y'all have deemed to be protein. And yes, it does a lot of good things, but we can't negate the other macronutrients. Speaking of macronutrients, this series today, actually, this episode starts a 4-part series on macronutrients. We're going to be talking about protein, then we'll go to fat, carbohydrates, and we're going to end with fiber. Now, fiber technically isn't a macronutrient, it's actually a subset under carbohydrates, but it's very important for the body. So I wanted to get that in there. Now, before we get into the macronutrients and further down into the macronutrients, into the protein, we also want to acknowledge micronutrients. Now, what are micronutrients? Well, I'm glad you asked. Micronutrients are going to be the small things that our body use. Think about the word micro, right? Normally means small. These are going to be the small things that our body use to do all of its different processes. And they come in the form of our vitamins and our minerals. When you supplement, right, you take a small little pill. You're not eating a big chunk of vitamin A. You're not eating a big chunk of vitamin C. It's in our food. And even when we supplement it, we take these small little pills because we don't need a lot of it. But we do need some. We need some for our body to do its various processes. Part of those micronutrients, they help with metabolism. They help with our immune system. They help with heart function. I mean, it's just so the list goes on and on and on. They help with so many different things. The cool thing is, if you listen to this podcast, every single week we talk about a different micronutrient every time we do the vitamin of the week. Now, a little bit of a spoiler alert. Every week is not going to actually be a vitamin. Some of those weeks are going to be minerals because I want to get through as many of the micronutrients as I can. So that's everything on micronutrients. Now, getting back to protein. So why do we need protein? Protein helps in a lot of different areas. I'm going to highlight a few for you. I took some notes, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. The first one is muscle repair. So if you go to the gym and you work out and you do like resistance training with the weights and all of those things, when you're really getting a good workout in and you get that soreness, of course, that's from lactic acid buildup and things like that. But what also happens in our muscles is we have micro tears, little small tears that aren't hurting anything, and they actually have to be built back up. Well, protein helps to do that, and that's what allows our muscles to get stronger and bigger. So it definitely helps with muscle repair. The other thing that protein helps with is satiety. So when we eat, we feel more satisfied. Typically, we feel fuller longer when we eat proteins versus just eating like carbohydrates. So think about it this way. If you eat some chicken, you're probably not going to be hungry right off the bat again, versus like eating a bag of chips. You eat a bag of chips and you be like, where did these chips go? because I'm still hungry, right? Because it's a carbohydrate, it's a quick acting energy source. But proteins last a little longer in our body. They help to keep us fuller longer. The other thing that protein does is it helps in our immune function. So some of our antibodies are made up of proteins. We even have a protein called C-reactive protein. And this one allows us to, it's a marker to see when there's inflammation in the body. So when it goes up, we know that there is more inflammation in the body. The other thing is hormones. So hormones are the regulators of the body. They come in, they tell us what to do. They basically boss us around. And one of the hormones, one of the most famous hormones, believe it or not, is called insulin. This helps to regulate our blood sugar levels. This helps when we have sugar in our blood, insulin helps us to get it from out of our blood and into the cells where it can be used for energy. Now, insulin is a small protein. The more you know. The I think that's everything that protein does. One thing I forgot to mention, enzymes are also made up of proteins. So enzymes typically do the breaking down of things in the body. So they help with metabolism or to metabolize things and break things down. So proteins can be enzymes as well. Protein is actually made up of a bunch of amino acids. So there are 20 amino acids that our body typically uses, and of those 29 are essential. Now, why are 9 essential? Because we actually don't make those 9 in the body. We make the other 11, but we don't make 9 of those amino acids in the body. And so we have to eat food that has those in it. Those 9 amino acids, when you have all of them, that's what we call a complete protein. And so you'll find complete proteins. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Where do you find complete proteins? There are 2 different places. And I always say this, but it's the same 2 different places. It's either animal products or plant-based products. So come on, follow me here. Now, with the animal-based products, any type of meat, lean meat, really any type of meat is typically going to have some protein, right? Unless it's like a completely um, fatty meat, then it won't have any protein. It'll just be fat. But most meat is going to have protein in it. Really, almost all meat. When it comes to protein, the leaner the meat, the more percentage of protein it typically tends to have. Now, the highest amounts of protein that you can get out of meat typically reside in chicken breast. You can get a lot of protein from chicken breast. You can get a lot of protein from tuna, a lot of protein from fish in general. You can get a lot of protein from salmon as well. So those are going to be meats that have a lot of protein. Of course, we know you get protein from beef. Um, you can get protein from pork. You can get protein from fish, including shellfish. You can also get protein from animal byproducts. So these are the things that are produced by animals. Those are going to be things like eggs. We know that protein is definitely found in eggs. And actually, it is higher percentage of protein in the yolk than it is in the white. But we use the white typically when we're trying to raise the protein level because the yolk also has fat in it. Just a little FYI. Nice little party trivia you can pull out at your next party and everybody think you're smart. Now, you can also find protein in milk and dairy products. Cottage cheese is super high in protein. If you like it, not a fan. And yes, I've tried good culture. I've tried it all. Daisy, it's all nasty. Now, some people like it. And if you like it, kudos to you because it is very high in protein. You can also find protein in Greek yogurt. You can find protein actually in just straight up standard milk. All milk has a certain amount of protein in it. Now, Fairlife, if you've ever heard of that brand before, I don't know if they throw a little extra protein in there or do something special with the cows, but that milk in particular tends to have a lot more protein in it than just regular milk. And then speaking of milk protein, you have 2 different types. You have what we call casein and whey. And typically, whey is the one that they will take out of the milk and use that to make protein shakes and protein powder, things like that. So if you've ever heard of like whey isolate or whey protein, that actually comes from dairy. And it's one of those two proteins, which is again casein and whey. So those are kind of all of the places you can find it. Did I say Greek yogurt? That's one of my favorites. You can definitely find it in that, but again, that's going to be that casein in that whey. Now, one thing I will say is if you are trying to get more proteins and less fat, you want to choose leaner meats in general. So chicken breast is going to have a higher percentage of protein than, say, like a chicken thigh. When you are looking at ground meat, typically ground meat has the percentages you see like 80, 20, 70, 30, things like that. What that is a percentage. The higher number tends to be the percentage of lean meat. The lower number is the percentage of fat. And so when it's 80-20, it's 80% lean, 20% fat. You want to kind of stick to the leaner meats if you're trying to, again, get a higher ratio of protein. The last thing I will say about protein is when it comes to beef in general, um, sirloins, fillets, those are going to be a lot higher in protein than like a ribeye or my personal favorite, a New York strip, because those have the marbling in them. The ribeye, the New York strip, you can see the marbling, the fat cap. Again, that is going to take away from the amount of protein that is held in the ounces of that meat. Now, where can you get it in vegetables? Okay. So protein, of course, if you ever go vegan or if you just eat it because you like it, right? There are a lot of meat alternatives. Um, Field roast, Impossible Burger, Beyond Meat, which is beyond gross to me. What else? There's just a bunch of those types of things. So you can definitely get protein from that. But you can also get protein from more natural sources. You can get protein from soy. Soy actually is one of the few plant-based products that has that complete protein. It has all 9 of those essential amino acids. And you can also get protein from mushrooms. Mushrooms are also going to be a complete protein. Let's kind of talk about pairing things together to get the protein. So remember I said there are 9 essential amino acids. Sometimes some food has some food has another. You put those together, you can make a complete protein. So an example of that is when you pair nuts and seeds with grains. If you prepare legumes and grains, both of those, when you put those two together, they make a complete protein. So an example of this is like red beans and rice. That's going to be a complete protein. With the nuts and seeds and grains, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or almond butter and jelly sandwich. That's going to be a complete protein. So you can find protein. Protein, of course, is in nuts. It's also in quinoa. It's a good source for plant-based protein. So you can find protein in a lot of different sources. All right, so let's talk about some guidelines when it comes to protein. How much should you have in a day? Now, I'm going to speak to about adults, or we could say adolescents to adults, people who are of a of an adult size, right? You typically want to, or I guess I should say, people who have stopped kind of growing in height. And that's not a good way to say it either, because adults can grow to like 25. Look, if you are for adults, we'll just say for adults, we'll keep it simple. And one day I'm sure I'll talk about it for kids, but for adults, when it comes to your protein, your daily amount, you should have zero point 0.8 to up to about 2.2 grams per kilogram. Now, what does this really look like? Well, first, you got to turn your pounds into kilograms. And the way you do that, and the reason why we have to do that is because America decided a long, long time ago that we would measure things in pounds. And everybody else does grams. I don't know. I don't know. But to convert from pounds to grams or kilograms, you just want to divide it by 2.2. So for example, let's say we're going to keep it simple. Let's say you weigh 220 pounds. You divide by 2.2, you weigh 100 kilograms, right? Now, in order to know how much protein, we said zero point 0.8 to 2.2. And most people kind of stay really in the range of zero point 0.8 to 1 grams of protein, but you can go all the way up to 2.2 and be fine. Um, zero point 0.8, that means you're going to eat 80 grams of protein if you weigh 100 kilograms, right? Point to 1, that just means it's going to be 1 for 1. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you need to eat 100 kilograms. So your range would be 80 grams of protein to 100 grams of protein per day. And again, if you went all the way up to 2.2, then it'll just be 220 grams of protein. It's a lot of protein. But that is kind of how you do that. Now, you can, studies have shown, people go up to 2.2 without any problem. You want to be mindful that you don't want to overdo the protein, though. Going up to like 4 grams per kilogram is going to be kind of too much protein, and that can actually start to have negative effects on the body. It can affect the kidneys in a lot of ways, because kidneys are, they kind of are they take the toxins out, right? They take all of the things that our blood doesn't need out, and if you're eating too much protein, you will start to mess up your kidneys, long story short. So you want to be mindful of that. Most people aren't really, you have to almost make an effort. Then again, I say that, and people just carnivores out here. I don't know. But anyway, you do have to make an effort, I feel, to really overeat protein, but it's definitely possible. So you want to be mindful of that. And we are on to our next segment called Chef Boy RDN Tries It. And this week for Chef Boy RDN Tries It, we're going to try Protein 2.0. That's what it looks like. It is protein water. Okay. So I was first introduced to this actually when I worked at the hospital. And this was one way that we could get the kids to get more protein when they needed more protein. Cool thing about it is it's only 70 calories for this whole bottle. And with the 70 calories, it's 15 grams of protein. Okay. Now, it does have some vitamins, some minerals, things like that. But the main thing that most people are getting it for is the protein. And guess what kind of protein it uses? Whey. It uses whey protein. So they just suspend it in the water. They say you're supposed to shake it before you drink it. So we give it a shake. Also has electrolytes, and this is wild cherry flavor. Let's give it a try. That was a lot that I poured in that glass. I hope it tastes good, man. All right, so here it is. As you can tell, I've been drinking my water out of here, so relax. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I often I have a love-hate relationship with cherry, because when cherry flavored things are good, they're really good. But when they aren't good, they tend to taste like cough syrup, cough medicine. Takes me back to my childhood, traumatic. But with this, it's kind of in the middle. It doesn't taste bad, gives a little hint of syrup, cough syrup at the end, but overall, it has a pretty good flavor. So for flavor, we give it a solid B. All right, now for the macronutrients, honestly, 15 grams of protein for only 70 calories, that's pretty good, especially if you are looking for protein supplementation. So solid A plus for that. For nutrition overall, I think it's fairly nutritious. It doesn't have anything crazy in there. It does use erythritol as the sweetener, so there's that, which is perfectly fine. And it does have some vitamins and some electrolytes. The one cool thing I will say is that it has multiple electrolytes. So it's not just saying it's got electrolytes and then they just put a bunch of sodium in there. It has some good ones. So for that, I give, again, a solid, I would say B plus A minus for nutrition content. Really A. I'll give it an A. I'm feeling generous today. And then the actual look of it, the design, pretty cool. Solid B plus. Here's my only real con. And this is in general sometimes with protein water for me. The protein, they mix it in pretty good so you don't like feel grittiness or anything, except for when you swallow it, your mouth feels dry. It almost dries out your mouth. And so for that, it's like a D. I don't really like that. I don't like that. So overall, I have to give it maybe a B minus. Pretty good. It's just that mouth feel that I got to get over. But I definitely will drink it and I definitely will buy it again. And that is Chef Boy RDN Tries It. Now it is time for the vitamin of the week. This week we're going to be talking about B6. Now y'all know I got my notes for this because there's a lot to get through. But with B6, the formal name is paradoxine. It is, I chose it this week because it's actually involved in over 100 enzyme reactions related to protein metabolism. So obviously, it is perfect to pair with proteins. I know, I do a good job. Now, it helps, it does that, but it also helps with cognitive development because it helps to produce neurotransmitters. So it does that. That's super cool. It also helps with gluconeogenesis as well as glycogenolysis. So when we talk about gluconeogenesis, that actually is when the body converts things like glycerols and proteins into or into glucose, I guess I should say. And then glycogenolysis is when glucagon, which is the stored form of glucose, is actually transformed back into the active form of glucose. So the stored form of glucose or glucagon, our body can't use it at that time. But when we convert it back into glucose, we can then use it for energy. So it's good for those two things. It's also been shown to help with the immune system. So that's good as well. Now, sources. You can get it from fish. Fish is going to definitely be a big source, mainly salmon and tuna. You can also get it from liver because liver has everything, literally. You can get it from potatoes. You can also get it from non-citrus fruits. One to note is bananas. So bananas is not just good for potassium. It's also good for B6, paradoxine. Now, when we talk about deficiencies, this thing will mess you up. All right. If you're deficient, you can have anemia, not fun, cracked lips, terrible, scaling lips, scary, you can also have depression, unfortunately, swollen tongue. That sounds painful. And confusion, irritability, and a weakened immune system. So you definitely don't want to be deficient in this. But this is one of those few water soluble vitamins that actually can really mess you up again if you have a toxicity. So if you take too much paradoxine, um, it can lead to nerve damage, which, nobody wants damaged nerves. That's not fun. So you want to limit it to about 100 milligrams per day. Now, the cool thing about it is if you're just eating food, you won't, you know, have a toxicity or eat too much of the B6. Most times it's not something that has to be supplemented unless your doctor recommends it for a very specific reason. But for most people, you don't have to go out and buy B6. You don't find it. And even if it's in a multivitamin, they put it in a way that it's not overdoing it. So that is everything on B6. All right, I want to thank you for spending this time with me. I'm going to drink the rest of this protein O2 water or 2O water, whatever it's called. It's kind of growing on me. Plus, I'm just thirsty in general. And speaking of thirst, I hope you've been drinking your water. I have. If you saw before this was in here, it was water in here, right? So this is only part of my 20%. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you definitely got to go back and check last week's episode where we talked all about water. Next week, we will be talking about fat. And I know I said that protein is one of my favorite macronutrients. To be honest, they all are my favorite macronutrients for various reasons. But fat, I feel like, is very misunderstood. So we're here to lay all of those myths to rest next week here on the Chef Boy RDN podcast. I'm going to drink this and I'm going to have a good day. Y'all do the same. You know, it's just dry, but it tastes good.